Kvaratskhelia steadying himself! A star in the making. And there's the only goal! Sabiri with it! After 11 years, once again, Milan are the champions of Italy.
Ciao ragazzi, and welcome to another edition of Serie A Sitdown, World Football Index's podcast for your Calcio to go. I'm Frank Crivello, and flying solo, it's all mine again. Richard, last minute under the weather, got hit like a ton of bricks with pink eye, so I'm running this show myself. There might be a guest popping up here. We are efforting at the moment, so if we get that person on, we will definitely bring him in, introduce him, and go from there. So it's been a very interesting week. The transfer deadline ended, or the transfer window is now officially shut. Ciao, George. Ciao, Apex Crafter. Ciao, Anthony. Good to have you guys all in the chat. Hello, Han Solo. All right. I'm not much of a Star Wars guy. I full disclosure there. I hate to confess that, but it is what it is. But plenty to discuss. We had the Derby Della Sud on Sunday, which was the highlight of match week 20. We'll break that down and digest it for you. We will discuss the continued downward spiral of Milan and Juventus. We'll talk about the rest of match week 20. Daniel Peters saying that Richard caught pink eye watching Milan. Man, it was 5:30 in the morning where I live, and I got up to watch that mess. So I also had to get out and plow my driveway because we had about 7 or 8 inches of snow. So but be that as it may, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the rest of match week 20. We'll briefly talk about Inter's 1-0 Coppa Italia win over Atalanta. I have some thoughts on that. We will wind up the transfer mercato that was, I wouldn't say non-existent for Serie A, but the big clubs really, the majority didn't bring anybody in of significance. I think when you look at how the Premier League teams spent in this window, you can look at Serie A and say nothing happened by comparison, and we can discuss if it's worrying and if it might be the product of a bigger problem economically for the Serie A clubs to be able to spend and reinforce in January, or most of those clubs might have said, "Hey, we have what we need. We don't need to make any other signings." I'm sure if it's Maldini, that's exactly what he's saying when it's coming to Milan. But be that as it may, we'll talk about that. So we will delay the Who Won Calcio Twitter yet for another week. So, but chat. Interact with me here. Go ahead, throw some questions, some ideas, talk about some things. Give me some questions that you guys have about the Serie A slate. And Anthony saying he was never expecting Milan to spend in January because of Serie A's failures. Well, there is certainly some validation to that. No question about it. Let's see here. I'm just taking a quick look. All right. Let's start with Napoli and Roma. The Derby Della Sud taking place on Sunday at the Stadio Diego Armando Maradona. It was Meret in goal, pretty standard fare for Napoli. They played their standard 4-3-3. Di Lorenzo, Rahmani, Kim, Rui, Anguissa, Lobotka, Zielinski in midfield. Osimhen flanked by Lozano and Kvaratskhelia. Going the other way for Roma, it was Patricio in goal, back three of Mancini, Smalling, Ibanez. Zalewski moved over to the right in the wingback position as they started Spinazzola. Brian Cristante and Nemanja Matic were in midfield. Paulo Dybala and Lorenzo Pellegrini playing behind Tammy Abraham. So, Roma setting up in a bit of a counter-attacking posture. You certainly expected Napoli to have the ball and Roma hoping to hit on the break, kind of the tactics that you generally see with Jose Mourinho. but Napoli wanting to obviously monopolize possession, be comfortable with the ball, things like that, put the other team under pressure. So I think the red flag kind of got exposed, despite the fact that he actually played a pretty good game. But moving Zalewski over to the right-hand side was not a recipe for success, at least early on. Kvaratskhelia was certainly the danger man in the early stages of the game, and in the 17th minute, he found Victor Osimhen for the goal of the week. Just the composure to be able to go chest, thigh volley. You never see that anymore at this level. It's quite astonishing, to see a finish like that at that level, arguably in the conversation for goal of the season as well. It does beg the question, though, if you're a Roma supporter, how is a Roma player not getting directly in front of Osimhen in that situation and deflecting his shot? Certainly there was plenty of time. You'd have to go back and take a look at the tape and see what happened there. But it was that's maybe the one question if I really want to split hairs. But it was a fantastic cross by Kvaratskhelia and Osimhen with the finish, and those two guys have just been fantastic in Napoli's attack. They've definitely not needed any endorsement from us, nor have we been really surprised about how they performed up to this point. Hello, Mr. Bob Lex. Good to have you with us. Definitely a world-class finish by Osimhen. Certainly in the conversation for the goal of the season, probably is the goal of the season up to this point. We were looking for quite a long time. I think the last one we talked about was very early in the season, was the finish from Verdi from distance. And I can't remember the opponent. I believe it was a half volley, but now we're coming to the Osimhen goal, really being the one that we look at. Roma created some pretty dangerous chances going the other way and in counter-attacking situations. There was also a near blunder by Min-Jae Kim, I believe, in the first half. But Roma was looking effective on the counter, but still 1-0 down at halftime because Napoli was looking effective going the other way as well. And this prompts a change from Mourinho. The Spinazzola thing didn't particularly work out. They continued to keep Zalewski on the right-hand side, which was interesting to me, and it became a more effective solution as things went on. El Shaarawy comes in. I believe that was right after halftime for Spinazzola, and it was actually Zalewski and El Shaarawy that would hook up on the goal, making it 1-1. El Shaarawy with a very nice record scoring against Napoli over the years, and he comes through again. And then finally in the 86th minute, it was Giovanni Simeone pounding in the winner, giving Napoli the 2-1 win. Assisted by Piotr Zielinski. And I think, and I'm going to do this again, great pass by Zielinski. And I thought an overall excellent performance from him, running things through the midfield and finding the spaces, getting the ball, kind of directing things and being dangerous. And while Kvaratskhelia and Osimhen deserve all of the praise that they're getting, I'm going to continue to bang the drum for Piotr Zielinski too, because he's been very effective in terms of pulling the strings. And when Napoli have had all of their departures and Fabian Ruiz is gone, it was a step-up opportunity for Zielinski, and he has certainly played that role. We take a look at the statistics from this game. I've got some statistics here through SofaScore. Richard's got a chart up, but they were even on the shots. Napoli definitely had more on target. So Rui Patricio doing a good job trying to keep Roma in this game and keep him in position. But it was more possession for Napoli. We had to expect that based on the way they play and the way that Roma typically play in games like this. Apex Crafter saying, for me, the game showed what makes Napoli special. Napoli's spirit towards the end and their resilience just makes me feel like they won't let go of the Scudetto. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. Roma, very good performances from, Cristante and Matic were low-key good. Zalewski obviously, creating the goal for El Shaarawy. But Zielinski just played a little bit better in terms of what he did, in terms of his ability to create things. He almost went the distance, created some big chances in this game, got some shots off, and then enough of a danger man to have Roma's attention. They fouled him a couple times too. Lobotka also needs even more. This one will go with as well. I think when I initially saw Lobotka, I thought and I felt that well, let's put it this way. I thought he was just a stopper. But I'm with you, Apex. I'm very creative, or very not creative, very, very impressed. I was reading another comment. Excuse me, guys. Very impressed with his passing, with his range, as you're saying. His ability to help them keep the ball, to be able to dictate things and move things. He's been just as special. And Anguissa with his ability to just run box to box. He's the kind of player that, you want to make comparisons, what Frank Kessie meant to Milan over the last couple of seasons and what he did in his heyday at Atalanta before transferring over to Milan. You're seeing a little bit of that with him. Kyle making the comment about Zielinski's run that he made for that goal, which gave Simeone that split second to score. I mean, these are the kind of things we're talking about, and we want to make sure, we get to some of the unsung guys with Napoli. All right. And now let me come back to what Apex's comment here about what makes Napoli special. If you're going to win a Scudetto, you have to win games in a variety of ways. You have to dominate as they did when they beat Juve 5-1. Let's see. You have to find ways to win in other games. This is a find a way to win game with a team that was bringing some resistance to the table, and giving Napoli some different things that could frustrate them. Okay. You have a mix of certain things. You don't play well and you find a way to win. They've done that. And right now with a 13-point lead at the top of Serie A, it's obvious to me they've got one hand on the trophy. So it's just that way right now with them. And it's hard to find any of these other teams. And the other reason why I think that they've got one hand on the trophy at this point is because you look at the rest of the teams at this table. You look at Inter 40 points, Lazio 38, Atalanta 38, Milan 38, Roma 37. These guys are all going to cannibalize each other over the course of the rest of the season. And all Napoli need to do the rest of the way is just keep finding ways to win in games, and the Scudetto is theirs. I mean, I think, a few weeks ago I said, okay, mathematically it's Spalletti and all this other stuff, but 13 points clear, and with the other things, I just can't see it. So, as it pertains to Roma, a lot being made about Mourinho taking a picture of his squad after the game in a loss. Kind of the glorified participation trophy. I guess any way Roma can get trophies, just as a dig at them. But, you want to see some competitiveness from Roma, because we've seen Roma through the years in games like this that they flake or they fall apart, or the mentality isn't there. But I think you see them having more of a spine under Mourinho, as we've been saying here now over the last couple of years. Quick question from Bob. Did Napoli manage to bring anyone in this transfer window? Just two players, Berezinski coming on loan from Sampdoria, and Golini coming in on loan for cover at goalkeeper from Atalanta. So that's the quick breakdown of Napoli and Roma, but we do have a guest. We're going to bring him in now. All right. It's our man, Martino Puccio. Martino, thanks for, you know what? I don't think I think people would have turned this off after about 15, 20 minutes of me just rambling. So I'm glad that you're coming in to save me here, man. How are you?
Good. And not at the same time, obviously. I think we both know why. But yeah, overall can't complain, just trying to get past winter time. But yeah, you were right about Napoli at this point. I think one of the main things as well that some people might be forgetting is that almost every top four competitive type team in that picture is going to have to travel to Naples the second half of the season. That's an incredible advantage that they have on top of the gap of that lead at the top of the table. They're just, I mean, it's just, say what you want about other teams not being competitive, ours included. This is just pure dominance. They deserve every single bit of it. And just like you were mentioning as well, they're winning games that you might not necessarily play your best, but they still grind them out. And two of those were two of the games were with Simeone scoring the winners, and that's what we saw this past weekend. And then what they did at San Siro against us. It's just different hero, different day. And still getting production from their top guys. And the way they did it with bringing all these players in over the summer, it's just that just doesn't happen, because you see what happens to us with taking a long time to integrate these players. But Spalletti, this is the best managerial job in Europe. I think probably the only other one that might rival it at this point. Well, there's two. There's Arteta, and I do think De Zerbi also deserves a shout for that. But
sure,
I mean,
So, and this is what I've been saying all along about Napoli. I mean, I thought with all of the departures and then with all of the arrivals, I thought Kvaratskhelia was going to be excellent from the start. I thought maybe Kim might have needed some time to adapt. Some of these other players getting integrated, and I thought Napoli was going to be the team that, for the first handful of games, it was going to take a little while. They were going to drop some points just out of needing to gel and things like that, and then they'd be the team that last 10 games of the season, they just blast through everybody, and they're the hot team for next year. And they've just gone way ahead of that schedule.
I mean, yeah, that's what I thought as well. I had them pegged top four. A lot of people were off on them for those movements. So it's like they're still keeping a main amount of them, especially in the midfield. It's that was a main part that they were keeping. Victor was back. It was just about him staying healthy. Who I think you last year picked him for Capocannoniere. I did as well. And I was saying from even a couple of seasons ago when he first arrived, that he just stays healthy under that system. This guy's a wrap at this point. Good luck trying to stop him. And it's been that. That goal was just sublime. I think the only thing at this point is, how does a Premier League club not knock at the door and say 150 and he's
at least.
At least, yeah. I think that's where it starts. I think Napoli would be inclined. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Richard was just complimenting this. This was a gift given to me, by the way. The Zielinski one. It's been all over the internet, been deemed as doppelganger. It's going to age poorly. I just feel it. But at the same time, it's just been incredible, because I think the pressure for replacing a guy like Insigne, and even Kim Min-jae replacing a guy like Koulibaly is the best defender in Napoli history, in my opinion. Replacing him is no small mountain to climb. And then Insigne, local hero, whether you loved him or loathed him, he had a poor season last year. I mean, this kid, Kvaratskhelia is just, it's one of the best signings I've ever seen.
And for 10 million, you see what these wingers are going for over at Chelsea, and Napoli got him for 10 million. It's insane.
We paid that much for Krunic.
Yeah.
So and hey, I like him, but just
he's not Kvaratskhelia.
No, he's not the most dynamic player to enter the league and take it by storm. It's just incredible. I mean, hats off, and Meret, by the way. Talk about a guy back and forth. This is why it shows to teach patience for a lot of young players and some of the kids that we have. Look how long it took him just to hit this level.
Sure.
It was a massive purchase back then for a goalkeeper within the league. And, there was ups and downs. Ospina was getting in there. Ancelotti favored him. Gattuso. And look at him now. Arguably been top 5 keeper in the league, I would say, this year. Yeah. So everything. Firing on all cylinders.
And I mean, as it pertains to young players that come, whether they come over here or they come out, or they get their professional call up or whatever the case may be, we talk about the instant success of Kvaratskhelia. We talked about how if Kvaratskhelia wasn't around, we'd be talking a lot more about Ademola Lookman over at Atalanta. And it's, I mean, because what he's doing is pretty damn impressive. But for every guy like that, there's 20 guys like CDK who, they're not a failure yet, but they're taking longer to adapt. I mean, even Rafael Leao, took some time before he hit the heights. I mean, young players coming in, people coming over from other leagues, the large majority of them, it's an adaptation period, and it takes a couple seasons to catch on. In most cases. So, but
that's a lot of the youngsters that we've had. Benacer struggled. The amount of yellow cards that kid was getting when he first arrived. Cassie was struggling for multiple times before he turned into the player he was. Tonali, objectively, just as bad of a season as CDK. And remember now, if you want to go by overall valuations with Leao, Tonali, and CDK, they were all 35 million euros. Okay, sure. Thiago Giallo went back to Lille in that deal. Tonali's initial price was 35 million from Brescia, and he had a great first season in Serie A, and then he struggled with us. And it had a lot to do with expectations. And again, I personally just don't like the way Pioli is handling CDK. I don't think he's the guy you sub off in that match on Sunday. It didn't make sense to me with Rebic on a yellow and not playing well.
Well, let's transition to Milan here. Sadly, I said last week on this, and Richard put a clip on Twitter, and I said it word for word. I said Sassuolo is going to be salivating at what this Milan team, how this Milan team sets up with the wingers that they've got. You think Lazio did some damage? Wait till you throw Loriot and Berardi at these guys. And just watch the sparks fly. And gosh, Berardi, a goal and 2 assists in the space of 30 minutes. I mean, they just absolutely thrashed Milan. Nothing's going right for Milan. There's plenty to unpack with them at this point, Martino. I mean, now injuries are piling up on top of it. Benacer was suspended, and now he got hurt subsequently thereafter. Tomori was not playing in this game. It's when it rains, it pours now at this point. Let's start with the system and kind of piggybacking Anthony's question. Why does Pioli continue to play a 4-2-3-1 when the personnel isn't the same as last year, when it's not, and when it's simply not working?
First of all, personnel is the main thing, right? How many guys you see, if you know truly their whole entire background of the midfielders on the squad, how many of them are defensive midfielders? You say maybe one, and that's the guy that keeps on turning down every single damn transfer every time it's offered, and that's Bakayoko. So anytime we see that, Krunic was normally a 10, and then we've seen him as a left winger. Benacer is clearly better as a mezzala than anything else. Tonali has proven anytime he moves closer to goal, he's a far better player. He is not that type of defensive work rate player that we have. Yassine Adli is not that. And then Astor Franks is also not that. And Tommaso Pobega, a guy who fouls more than any of these guys, is certainly not a CDM. So I think it's a fair question to ask, why aren't we changing this? This is clearly not working. And for me, the defensive rotations don't make much sense. We're still keeping with these guys. I mean, on the Fratesi goal was one of the most embarrassing goals I've seen allowed by a professional team in any league. Gabbia's rotating to the ball is incredibly slow, allows him too much space to even get the shot off. And Tatarusanu is the worst goalkeeper in the top 5 leagues right now by some distance. And it's startling. This is like 11 shots and 11 goals conceded on 13 shots. There's not much else left to say about that.
That's Sunday. That's worse than Sunday League football, for God's sake. I mean,
did you see the video of him warming up prior to the match at all, or no?
No, I didn't.
Oh, don't.
I'll tell you what though. When I watched, they had them coming out of the dressing room before halftime, and I mean, Tatarusanu was like slowly walking out of the dressing room, and he just looked dejected, like almost as if, it's almost as if he didn't want to go back out there. And Pioli just kind of walked past him and didn't even acknowledge his existence. And you finally get to a point where you're just like, okay, look, we can't do this anymore with this guy. Or the other thing, you're going to need to change the way you set your team up as long as you have him in goal. You can't go playing the same way with Maignan in goal and be exposed and be loosed and say, hey, Magnan's back there. He's going to save us, because this guy's not Maignan. You got to maybe play with some more compactness. There's no cover for the fullbacks. None. They're exposed. They're out on islands all by themselves. The wingers in front of them don't track back. There's no midfielders coming over to slide over and give support. And then, and Bonetti and I were going back and forth on this, and I said, well, if you're getting shit play from a 10, stop playing with the 10. Okay? Adapt. And I would love to take the 10 out of there, because I think that gives Tonali some room to advance into the midfield and be more of a playmaker, where if you saw the Lazio game, the presence of Brahim kept Tonali pinned back, and Lazio knew it, and they pressed the hell out of him and kept him from doing anything. So take the 10 out of there and try playing 4-3-3 and do some kind of setup where, okay, you don't have defensive midfielders right now, but you have guys that can be told, hey, you back up the attack going forward, and when we don't have the ball and it's wide, you go over and you support the fullbacks and try to do a serviceable job of it. At a minimum, that should be better than what's going on now. And you give Tonali a little bit more freedom to dictate things through the midfield.
He has like 20 different jobs at this point in time, and it's not easier on him. I think Calabria at this point, like you're saying, if he's on an island, he is not the type of fullback that could handle that. He gets outclassed constantly by athletes that are far superior to him. And that's one of my issues with him moving forward as a player. If Milan want to reach the heights that they want to, is that type of player doesn't work in Europe. And if it's not working in Serie A, which is relatively a much slower and less athletic league, I think that's why we saw a physically dominant Lukaku take over this league a couple years ago. We see it with Victor as well right now. And that's why it's a startling difference if you watch the Premier League and what we have. And again, just Brahim isn't great if he's not in open space. I don't know what else he brings. And a lot of the time now, when we concede first, teams are just going to start sitting back, because everyone knows we struggle with low blocks. So if we're not able to break down a low block, he's not trying to change up the formation. And Anthony's right. What is the importance of the goalkeeper in this system isn't that great in terms of a skill set outside of just stopping shots at this point. Like, if you can't even do the bare minimum of the fundamentals of a goalkeeper, then you can't be playing here. Every time he comes out for a corner, a cross on a corner, he's hesitant, he has poor positioning, he's terrible with his feet. And I even heard there was a story that his vision is terrible as well. So he can't even see, on top of him being way too slow. His hesitancy twice, I think, on the past two games where he doesn't come out. One on the Calabria penalty, and there was another one with Lazio as well. They were both ended up being penalties that, blame whoever you want on those. If the goalkeeper comes out and he's more confident and he clears the ball out of there, it's a totally different story. And the funny thing is, too, I know no one wanted to look at positives, but we kind of scored 4 goals in this game. Marginal offside goals. Giroud had 2 of them. Origi with a banger. I mean, Giroud scored 1 and then Rebic had the other offside. But it's frustrating when you see that. I think in the 3-point era, we have never conceded 4 goals or more in consecutive games. And that's something that this club should pride itself on. And it's frankly very embarrassing.
Yeah, glaring problems. So what's the fix then? I mean, I still am against sacking Pioli, and the honest question that I asked everybody, I said, who would you get? Who comes in and cleans this up? Who comes in that you would be happy with for a long-term period? I heard a couple people answering me saying, well, it gives a short-term boost of morale. Well, that's great. It gives a short-term boost. But it's not going to sustain itself all the way to the end of May.
And then, you're ending up playing 3 managers at that point, because you're saying you're trying to replace someone again in the summer. If you're making a
exactly,
who's signing on for 6 months? No one's doing that. That's of quality, by the way. I think I see people saying Tuchel. Tuchel's out of there. It's not possible.
No chance.
There's no chance. There's the only one I do want in the future, and I don't think it's possible this summer. But I would love De Zerbi eventually. That's always someone I thought would be capable of making that leap. Yeah. But
the more he succeeds at Brighton, the more ingrained he's going to be there, and it's going to be hard to get him out of there. I mean, people want to be. I mean, you realize what you got to pay Tuchel, and we're in a contract squabble with extending Rafael Leao, and people want us to get Tuchel. Just dreaming. I mean,
he's gonna get paid more than the majority of the players on this team.
Exactly.
It's just I don't think people realize that, and then also, I'm not trying to harp on Redbird. We still don't truly know what they are yet as an ownership group because they haven't had a full summer to do this. What are they willing to pay up for? Because the rumors are saying that 50 million from the summer and this month was more than enough. And we're kind of like, okay, well, that's not what we want to hear, but we see what everyone else in the other top 4 leagues are doing outside of the Premier League. No one's really spending. So no, everybody loves to tell you what the problem is, but they never offer a solution. The same thing with positions. It's just people don't realize there's one issue and then another one pops up. Like you have to have a replacement. It's silly.
And that's always the thing that I say. Like I love to respond to that on Twitter. Say, "Well, Pioli's got to go." I say, "All right, well, who are you going to get?" I mean, it was the same thing with the World Cup with the USA, and people are saying Gio Reyna has to play. I said, "Well, who are you taking out right now?" I mean, it's kind of tough, I get that Gio Reyna should play, but I mean, who do you take out of that? Who do you take out
of the starting 11? Yeah, sure. With the substitutes, I totally understood. No one wants to see Jordan Morris out there. No disrespect to him.
True, for sure.
Like Gio Reyna. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It's in the middle of a crisis. My only thing is, it's like, what happens when Mike is back? Because again, the rumor today was, I think Corriere said that it's actually back for Monza, not the first leg against Spurs, which is terrifying. But like, how big of a difference is he going to make? If he's that big of a difference, I think more blame even has to be on Pioli at this point, because it turns out Tatarusanu was that bad. And that's inexcusable for that many matches in a row. What has it been? It's 12 goals in 3 matches in all comps last 3.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, we had previous with this the first time around when Maignan was injured. Milan conceded 15 goals in the first 9 games without him. I mean, it's not like he all of a sudden just becomes a better goalkeeper. So, when you give him another chance, he's what he is. He's not even average anymore. I mean, he's past it. And, you bring in this kid and he can't be worse than Tatarusanu. I agree with Anthony.
Antonio Donnarumma. Remember when we put him in Coppa Italia? I mean, he was a hero for us.
Cult hero. Cult hero.
but again, that was a guy playing in Serie A. Like, you don't know until you put him in. And again, it's not like we're saying we're putting in like a random guy from the Paraguayan league at striker. We're just putting him in at goalkeeper. Does he have the reflexes? The reflexes can't be worse. The positioning can't be worse. The confidence can't be worse. Like, I'm sorry. That's just, I don't agree with this line of thinking.
Right. Yep. Do you have the players to play a De Zerbi system? My God, do you imagine what De Zerbi could do with Leao? So he's got
the cusp of Europa League with Sassuolo players. No disrespect to them. I mean, Jeremy Boga, we saw how great he was with them.
Yeah. And he's got Mitoma flying like crazy right now for them. I mean, just
unbelievable. He's making them a ton of money.
Yep. Well, I mean, as bad as things have been for Milan, we can say this: we're not Juve. The 15-point penalty, and now losing 2-0 at home to Monza, who I've been saying forever. For anybody that listened, it was a bad start for Monza. I was like, you know what? It's not going to last forever. Monza's got a good collection of players that just need. They were kind of going to be the trajectory that I thought Napoli would be under, that it was going to just take some time for it to come together. These guys needed to play and they needed to figure it out, and they finally have figured it out. So, and Armando Izzo validated us in this game because we put him in our team of the half season in the back at center back, because it has not been a good year for center backs in Serie A overall. And it's not like Izzo made it by default. Ever since he's been fit and playing, Monza looked like a better team, at least defensively. And then they've got the playmakers going forward. But the Juventus situation right now, it's unheard of for either you or myself to see Juventus lose at home to someone like Monza. They outshot them 22-3. They had 8 on target.
0 points in both games.
But yeah, 0 points in both games. And and they're stuck with Allegri at this point. I mean, and they're stuck with those tactics, and they can't get anybody better either. I mean, just
still paying Sardi, I believe, as well.
Right. And I bet I wonder. I think they're still paying Pirlo. They've got to be.
Yes, as well. Yeah.
So so it's their hands are tied. So they're stuck with this style of football, and it's got to be just maddening for for Juventus fans at this point. And they ended up being a selling club. And Kyle saying Monza the first team to do the double over Juve since the 1930s. I mean, that just shows you how bad it's gotten at Juventus.
Yeah, listen, I mean, if we're talking tactically and on the pitch, it's just been that 8 or 9 game stretch where they were marginally winning games, and great for you. If you don't concede, the likelihood of you losing a game is very low. But at
Mm-hmm.
some point, when you start struggling and you're going through your rough patches that we saw earlier in the season, and it resurfaced once again, it's going to be a mess. Pogba hasn't played whatsoever. Chiesa coming back from a torn UCL. Dusan Vlahovic, he's Bigfoot this season. This is just really poor. The 15-point deduction is just one thing. And Frank, to be honest with you, there hasn't even been a verdict yet on the wage case, because the wage case is a really massive thing for them. If they were paying players under the table, this is a separate case that a lot of implications could be had about this. We're talking about a UEFA ban. We're talking about another points deduction. Whether this points deduction gets reversed, we don't know. I actually personally believe it's going to. But again, who wants to stay at that point when you hit summer? And then again, you're right about the Allegri. I see Juve fans saying Zidane. Why does Zidane want to go there?
Yeah.
Why does he want to? Seriously, give us a good, because he played for you guys in the late 90s.
As more things get unpacked with Juventus, the less desirable going there is going to be. I don't subscribe to what Juve fans are saying. Just some of the threatening attitude that they have, that if you take Juve down, Italian football is going down with it. No, it's not. I mean, I think that it's in a reasonably better place than it was 10 years ago, where it was Juve and everybody else. And hopefully over time that's going to evolve. If some of these clubs can figure out a stadium situation and get out of some of these old relics, that will be a big help.
Yeah.
But to say that Italian football's screwed just because Juve is going to be going down with, I don't buy it.
It's ignorant, because, and I think it's very arrogant as well, because you're sitting there saying, okay, Milan and Inter, right? If you were to combine them as to both what they bring to this league, and if they were both to be really poor and not playing well, I guess we had an example of that last decade, didn't we? And how was Serie A doing, and how was Juve doing? Juve was doing really well. I mean, they didn't win the Champions League, but you're making 2 finals. You're consistently generating more money, bringing in bigger players, keep retaining those superstars that you had, and selling at good points like Pogba, Vidal were good sales, but they were still maintaining it for so long, and eventually got Ronaldo in there. The way they increased their brand, the way with the stadium, it shows that they didn't really need Milan and Inter to succeed like that. And I think it's also the reverse. Milan and Inter don't need Juve to survive like that. Will the league be in a better place with all three? Absolutely. There's no arguing that. Everybody knows that. But to simply sit there and sit with that arrogance to say that you need us is just Denzel Washington in Training Day, where he's sitting there saying, "Y'all gonna do this to me?" That's exactly what that is. And I think Vlahovic is gone this summer. I really do. I think it's a Bayern that's going to come in and scoop him.
They're going to need to make some money off of the guys that are attractive from an asset standpoint. And I know your time is tight, so I'm going to jump into some before going over the rest of the of match week 20. I want to talk about the Mercato with you here, or lack thereof here in Serie A. The big teams really didn't do anything. Milan brought in Davis Vasquez, as we talked about. Nobody knew coming in for Inter. Napoli taking Berezinski and Golini in on loan. Juve brought in a young player. Roma getting Diego Llorente on deadline day from Leeds on loan. These are just some of the highlights. I mean, I think the most notable signings are Josip Brekalo coming to Fiorentina for, it appears to be really cheap. We got Florian Thauvin going to Udinese, which is an intriguing signing for me. I think the playmaking of Thauvin, there's some playmaking quality to him that's going to take some pressure off of Deulofeu and is going to be a big help for Udinese's cause if they're trying to make a European push, because they're still in the conversation for that. And then Memo Ochoa going to Salernitana. So how concerned are you about this Mercato as a whole for Serie A, with just a lack of signings. I mean, obviously you look at the level of the Premier League and they're spending like crazy, especially Chelsea. And I wish some accountants from UEFA would make a little trip to London and check that out. But
how are you going to?
Let's talk about Serie A in this mercato. How concerning is it that it was a struggle to just get the players that I even mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the big talk was about who was leaving this window, right? I mean, Traore, good for Sassuolo doing what they did with that kind of business they were born with. But, I mean, we're talking about a lot of clubs still losing money from COVID. Napoli necessarily didn't have to do any business, so I respect what they were doing there. I know they were in on the Moroccan midfielder. His name is escaping me.
Unahi?
Yes. Yeah, I think he went to France. And again,
Marseille,
yep. And again, Milan, I understand the situation. I think long-term we're still okay because everyone knows we're still financially healthy. We're just not getting the investments that everybody wants. Inter is a disaster.
Yep.
They're a disaster. There's no two ways about it. We knew they're not going to reinvest, and they need to get 60 million net by the end of June, from what I understand. So they're not getting anything from Skriniar. So it's going to have to be Dumfries and a combination of someone else. I think Lukaku is going to be gone. But this is the state of the league. You don't get great TV deals. You don't have aesthetically pleasing stadiums. You don't fill up the stadiums. You don't have modern stadiums. You're having clubs that are doing very poorly in terms of training methods. I mean, how often do we have to sit here and see Milan have these issues? Benacer didn't play. He's hurt. How is this possible? I don't know, but it's happening. And then again, it's kind of like, where's the money coming from that these teams should be purchasing? And again, what we're saying with Juve, if we what we think might happen, if there's a transfer ban inbound, depending on what happens with these cases, they're not going to invest either. What we're going to have to rely upon is a miracle of these 3 Serie A clubs in the Champions League advancing somehow, and they're gaining money from that. To me, I think Napoli can make the best run. I think we're toast. Inter, who knows with them? It's dire times right now, and this is a long-lasting effect from COVID and also poor ownership groups. I don't think we're going to see much from Lazio because that's just the way Lazio is. Roma, the Friedkins have done a good job, but I don't think they can invest that much more than what we would like.
Right.
And then you're just looking at, like, what do you really expect from all these other clubs? And I'm kind of sitting there saying, I don't expect anything from them except for sales. So I mean, it's just the reality of it. And maybe if you want to say some of these other leagues, you don't see other teams spending. Even La Liga, the money is tight, and there's some issue here. And it's funny because the whole point of FFP and why it was introduced was to make this stuff more competitive in Europe, whether it's Europa League, Champions League, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and the gap has only widened. It really has. I mean, like, what has your son seen? Right. As like you have to tell him about what Milan was. He doesn't know what his perception and kids his age perceive our league.
Yeah,
it's just they don't view it the same, and it hurts at the worst time. I always tell Milan Weekly Pod this: Serie A got worse at the wrong time because of stadiums and social media presence and all that other stuff where it was expanding in North America. And I don't think a league took a bigger hit than us compared to where they were and where they got knocked down to. And it sucks. It sucks, man. And it's going to be a while. And also, by the way, the punting of having the Euros in Italy was a big hurt too, as well, because that would have helped with stadium development. And we're sitting there saying, what is it? Atalanta, Juve, and Udinese. And I think Sassuolo also own it. What the hell?
Yep. Yep.
Not much left to say.
Yeah, I agree. I'm disappointed to see certain players leave. I think there's also some there was some movement within clubs, some loans and some movements and things like that. Richard mentioned in the private chat, Sabiri going to Fiorentina. How many more midfielders does Fiorentina need? And I think that's a big part of the problem with why Fiorentina are struggling so much is because they've got all of these players, and Italiano's taking all season long to try to figure out what his best 11 is and stick with it. It's this guy's coming in or that guy's coming in, and it's
very weird reinvestment of the money from Dusan, and it just hasn't hit. Like Cabral, they expected more of. Jovic as well, I believe. Like it's disappointing.
And I got to say, for Sassuolo, I love seeing them get Nedim Berami on loan. I mean, you put a 10 in with those wingers and with what they can do up front, and the guy now that can create through the midfield. Now you're not relying on everything going through Lorient and Traore and Berardi. You've got some play through the midfield now, and I think that Sassuolo under De Zerbi were particularly dangerous with that kind of system when they had Juricic in the 10. And, I don't think that Sassuolo has had an effective player in that role since then. So, no, Amrabat did not move from Fiorentina. There was talk Barcelona was in, but Fiorentina didn't like the offer. So that got rejected. So fortunately, he's still with us.
For now.
But some of these other players, Kiwior leaving for Arsenal, McKennie going back to the Premier League and going to play for Leeds, Malinovsky, even though I said Atalanta won't miss Malinovsky because they're just the way they play is different. They don't need a high playmaking, attacking midfielder with the way they're set up. That he's over at Marseille now, and that Atalanta are going to be fine without him, and they have been. But yeah, I mean, it certainly was a loss for Serie A this mercato as a whole. Hard to find any real winners. In this mercato, I probably would say Napoli is the winner of this mercato because none of the other teams that have a chance of chasing them were able to strengthen. So, and on top of that, they get Berezinski to fill in for Di Lorenzo from time to time. Golini, in case something happens to Meret, a serviceable enough goalkeeper. So,
and it helps with Champions League rotation.
Exactly.
They realize this gap is so widened. Teams are struggling, inconsistent. Like we see this weekend is the Derby. And then we're going to have an advantage in which Napoli is probably going to gain more points on the second place team or one of the top 4 competitors. It's incredible. And, kudos to them. 33 years is a long time. I'm a Mets and Jets fan. And I can't even imagine what it would feel like to do that. But
you might get Aaron Rodgers.
I think that is going to happen. I hope.
Yeah.
I pray to God.
They're talking about it. Yeah, they're talking about it here in Wisconsin. They're saying that they're open to trading them. So
we'll see. Yeah, repeat of 2008. Just please don't tear your triceps muscle, please. I hope that doesn't happen. But hey, we'll see what happens. I think it's a very big summer for this league because it could go south quick, and I think 2 of the big clubs within this league are going to suffer. And I think Napoli will be front runners once again next season. If significant investments, what I mean for Milan is if there isn't something over like 50 to 60 million euro to play with, if they make top 4, and if Milan don't make top 4, Inter have to do what they have to do, Juve or miss out on top 4 as well or get a ban.
Yeah,
that just put a fork in them. It's Napoli's league again, in my opinion.
Going to be very interesting, no question about it. So. You got time for me to whip through the rest of this match week slate, or you got to get cruising?
How many more we got here?
I'm just going to whip through the scores of the games, and we'll just give a quick overview of what happened, that sort of thing.
Let's go for it. If I have to dip, I'll tell Richard.
Okay, sounds like a plan. All right, so everything kicked off on Friday, Bologna beating Spezia by 2-0. Things continue to get better under Thiago Motta. Stefan Posch has been excellent for Bologna, getting on the score sheet along with Riccardo Orsolini. The clean sheet for Skorupski, keeping Spezia at bay. Salernitana going on the road and beating Lecce and showing all of the big teams that have gone to Lecce and not win. Milan, hello. Lazio, Juve even, I think, didn't win. But Salernitana can go there and win. 2-1. It was Boulay Dia in the 5th minute, and then Tony Vilhena in the 20th minute, and then Gabriel Sterfezza in the 23rd minute for Lecce. Solid performance, has to be said, from Memo Ochoa, making 4 saves to help preserve the win for Salernitana. Empoli and Torino playing to a 2-2 draw. We had Sebastiano Luperto from Razvan Marin, and then Razvan Marin scoring himself to make it 2-0. Samuel Ricci making it 2-1, and then Antonio Sanabria leveling it with 5 minutes to go, 2-2. Relatively entertaining game, 27 total shots between the two teams. Inter going on the road and playing Cremonese. Inter had 65% possession, 30 shots, 10 on target, and win 2-1. If Osimhen didn't do what he did against Roma, we'd be talking about David Okerike's goal a lot more.
I was literally just thinking the same thing. It got overshadowed by it. That was a banger. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure. But then Lautaro Martinez comes back 10 minutes later to tie it and then grabs the winner in the 65th minute from Aiden Dzeko. I mean, that's a break. I mean, it's low key, but that's a breakthrough performance for Lautaro Martinez because I always find him to be an effective goal scorer when Inter in counterattacking environments. He's not as much the guy they find in those moments when they're more ball dominant and they're more possession dominant with all the chances. It's usually Dzeko. So for Martinez to show at least a little versatility in how he scores his goals, pretty meaningful for Inter. Atalanta and Sampdoria, 2-0 to Atalanta. Joachim Mela in the 42nd minute, and Ademola Lookman does it again in the 57th. Again, if we didn't have Kvaratskhelia, we'd be talking a hell of a lot more about Ademola Lookman in the season.
Only €2 million more, I believe. I think it was purchased for 12 from a club that doesn't get robbed like that in Leipzig.
Incredible.
That's the crazy part. Yeah.
Incredible.
Sorry to cut you off. Yeah.
No, you're good. Lazio Fiorentina played to a 1-1 draw.
Big for top four there was.
What's that?
I said it was big for top four for Milan in that aspect. I was sweating that out on Game Pack Cast on ESPN.
Yep. Nicola Casali scoring in the 8th minute, getting his first ever Lazio goal. I think it's what he's done defensively this season has been remarkable. And we even said when we picked our team of the half season, we went with Itzo and Kim as our center backs. But if you wanted to make a case, if you wanted to say Casali deserved to be in there, I wasn't going to fight you. 49th minute for Nicolas Gonzalez to level it for Fiorentina. And then I believe Monday we had Udinese and Hellas Verona going to a 1-1 draw. A Becao own goal in the 4th minute. And then followed by Lazar Samardzic in the 21st minute were the activity from the goal standpoint there. Udinese, 26 shots in this game with 8 on target.
They were really. I was actually tuning into that one. I almost fell asleep towards the end of the first half. But Udinese, after conceding the goal, they were just on it the entire time. The fact that they couldn't pull out a win for that, that's just. I think it's so massive for Verona because we know the situation that they're in, and I think that's a really disappointing result for Udinese. I can't begin to speak on that because what they were doing at the start of the season and these types of results for them are even more frustrating when Milan have issues with them because you see Verona this is so typical Serie A, man.
Yep. Let's focus on the bottom here right now because for quite some time it's been Verona, Sampdoria, Cremonese. Okay, Cremonese just bring in Davide Balladini, and we've talked at length about what he's about. If you go play for Davide Balladini, you're not going to get the ball. Your team, if you have 30% possession playing for him, that's probably high. They sit back, they play deep, they let you have it, and they try to counter you. That's what they're going to try to do, and they're going to try to scratch and claw their way out. Sampdoria under Stankovic have played better. They're playing harder, but now a bunch of these guys have left through the window, and who knows what this team's going to look like over the next few months. So they're desperate at this point. And Hellas Verona starting to play a little bit better, but a key piece, Ivan Ilic leaving them now, going to Torino. That's a big blow. Yep. And they've been in that bottom three for quite some time. I think Sassuolo will find themselves back in the ascendancy. So let me ask you this question. If one of these three miraculously make it out, at whose expense is it going to be more likely, Spezia or Lecce?
Man, I think Spezia. The way Lecce have been playing in some of these big games, it's so invaluable. And I think that's going to carry and be the difference for them over time. But honestly, if that even were to happen to Spezia or Lecce at this point, just the bottom three are just hot trash. We're talking about a team that hasn't won a game. That's embarrassing. And I know we drew to them, of course, but it's just a testament to kind of overall what Italian football is like now. This isn't like, it was great when a team like Empoli was coming up the way they did the second time and they were playing much better football. what Cremonese is doing, this is not sustainable, and it's reflective in what their record is this season. And I don't expect too much. And again, Kiwara is a good point for Spezia losing them, but maybe Daniel Maldini does something to carry them. I don't know. Spezia is one of those weird teams, man. They just grind out these like big results against these top level sides, but just always drop against teams that they could probably get a result against. I'd probably say Spezia. Lecce I just respect too much, and I don't want to see my guy Colombo go down either, because he's been pretty impressive, in my opinion.
Well, and I think I agree with you, and I think Lecce can lean on their home form and how well they play at home. I mean, obviously, except for this past week against Salernitana, they've gotten some pretty impressive points from some pretty good teams, in that run. So they're going to be able to lean on that to scratch and claw for some points for them to survive. So I think if there's a team that likely goes into a free fall and ends up in this drop, it's Spezia. And I think that, I want to pull for Dejan Stankovic because I think he was good for Crvena Zvezda. He took a leap of faith to come to Sampdoria. Yeah. They're playing harder under him for sure. They're just, the results don't show for it. But Verona would definitely be the more likely, just looking at the points and just kind of looking at the makeup of their team to survive the drop over them at this point. It's kind of hard to factor in. Let's see here. Are you with me on the theory? We talked about Lazio. Let's come back to Lazio. So, I mean, they batter Milan 4-0, and then they draw Fiorentina 1-1, and they're kind of in this kind of helter-skelter thing. They still got Europa League. Do you think that there's a little bit of the fact that, first of all, their home record has been very good, and they've beaten some good teams at the Olimpico this season? How they perform away. It's been low key pretty good. I mean, the performances have clearly been better at the Olimpico, but more of their big matches are away in the second half of the season. Do you see them keeping up this top four charge, or do you think that that's a team that you look at and say they're probably pretty likely to taper off?
I think they're likely to taper off given the history of the way Lazio is in recent years and Sarri's history of rotation. And again, a point is we haven't been this late into the calendar with this many matches left. Right. And that's going to spell doom for some of these sides, in my opinion. It's great that they scored 4 goals without Immobile at home against Milan, but maybe is it more about what Milan have been recently rather than themselves? Because then we see what they do against Fiorentina, what they did against Lecce. It's the kind of inconsistency. And again, they were playing great defensively a good portion of this season. You mentioned Casale. Our guy Romagnoli was playing very well as well. So to me, I think it's just about rotation. I think Atalanta and Roma, I give a slight edge ahead of them, but who knows with this Inter stuff as well? Does Inter really handle that kind of turmoil there? Because again, their star player is leaving. And I think at the end of the day, what does that spell for some of their other stars? Do they want to stay long-term? I know they're professionals. I know they're going to do their best to get into the top 4, but it could get dicey with them. Who knows what happens with Juve if they get their 15 points back or not? Because again, it's all or nothing. They either get all points back or they keep that 15-point deduction. There's no in between. So I think that's big. I think Milan will eventually turn it around when Magnan's there, and I think morale will have to turn around. I think they're too good. Yeah. Like this is one of the worst stretches I've ever seen from a good team ever. Yeah. One of the worst title defenses ever.
Yes.
But again, I think teams with greater depth are going to succeed over the course of this season, because what happened to Lazio during the COVID lockout year, it was killer for them. And how much can Immobile stay healthy? It's starting to catch up to him the past couple of seasons now. And as he gets older, I kind of worry for him in that sense. So we'll see what happens. But I don't love it too much.
Would you say, I mean, top 4 right now, Napoli, obviously, with Napoli aside. I mean, predict the top 4 right now as it looks. I mean, I actually can see Atalanta, because this is all they've got left now. They're out of the Coppa Italia. They lost to Inter yesterday. I can see Atalanta grabbing a place because this is their sole focus. I mean, we've seen it work with Milan and Inter, although they went on to win the Scudetto. under those conditions. Atalanta probably won't do that here. But I can see Atalanta grabbing a spot. The homer in me is going to say Milan is going to ultimately grab a spot. Then after that, you got to make a decision. Inter, Atalanta, or not, Inter, Lazio, or Roma. Who grabs that last Champions League place?
I'm going to take Lazio out of that.
Okay.
The Roma stuff, I think Dybala, again, is a dicey type of player when it comes to this health. And they still have Europa League. Defensively, I think they're sound. And it looks like they're going to be disciplining Zaniolo. I think that eventually hurts them. Say what you want about him. He's still good in creating for them. They weren't great in finishing, and that's why the stats didn't reflect that, because we saw Tammy struggle so much. Tammy's slowly turning it around, thanks to Milan, of course. So I think they had the outside shot, but something about Atalanta, I trust Gasperini more in recent years than a Mourinho. I think they have more depth. Lookman is the hottest player in this league outside of anyone on Napoli at this point. I think they're playing great. And again, for Milan, right now, Frank, you know this is the toughest stretch that they got of the schedule. If they could somehow try and resalvage some of this, they were fortunate that Roma lost over the weekend when they embarrassingly lost to Sassuolo. So there's a 0-point change there. They have time to turn this around. I think it'll probably end up being Napoli, Milan, Inter, and Atalanta. If Juve don't get those points back. If Juve get the points back, I actually do think they get back in.
Derby della Madonnina on Sunday. How does it go down? I mean, let's set the table for this real quick.
Okay.
We've seen this derby be one where you just throw form out the window. I mean, I'm making a case for Milan here, but I remember I think it was 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, Milan were flying under Gattuso. Inter were struggling, and then they get to the derby and Inter win 3-2.
Icardi hat trick, I believe, right? Is that the one you're referring to?
No, that was when Lautaro had the penalty, and I want to say Lautaro scored twice in that game.
When Icardi was there?
No, the Icardi hat trick was even before that.
Okay, yeah. So many losses.
Might have been 4 years ago. I'd have to go back and look. Maybe somebody in the chat might know. But we've seen that happen so many times. You get to this derby and it's just totally different dynamic. Now, if Milan can win this game, then there's a theory that, okay, this kickstarts things going forward. If Inter win this thing, it just validates that Milan are still struggling and they're not out of this yet, and that Inter are, basically finding ways to win. But your thoughts? What are you looking to see happen here on Sunday when they hook up?
I can't recall in my life seeing Milan have worse form going into a derby. And we've seen some god awful teams in the 2010s. I really don't feel strongly about it. It doesn't seem like there's a change at goalkeeper. A defensive change if Tomori's back in, who knows? Benacer might not be playing. That's not a guarantee just yet. There's a lot of question marks, and defensively, it's a disaster. If Milan win this is going to have to be like a 4-3. I would love a draw. In this. I think a draw is huge for Milan. I think anything other than a win for Inter is a massive disappointment for them. All things, what they did to us at the Super Coppa was disgusting. That was an embarrassing performance, how we've been playing these past couple of matches. But at some point, the champions have to show that they were champions last season. Where is it? Because it's also a morale mentality thing. And I'm barely seeing that. You never know. And again, I have little faith in them turning it around defensively at this point with what they got. I have a really hard time seeing it, man. I try to be optimistic about this, but I think this could be, I think Inter win this one by like 2 goals. I think it could be a 3-1. I'm not too positive on it.
Where I think, and Tato San is going to start in goal, to all Milan supporters' dismay. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. But where I think this, in a way, helps Milan is I think that this is going to be a derby where Inter are going to have more possession. And if you want to make a case for how you can beat Inter, It's let them have the ball and invite them to come forward and expose spaces. Okay. So, make them predictable, let DeMarco go out there on the left-hand side and just pump in crosses. It's coming. Just make sure you win the aerial battles. Okay. And you trust the defenders to do that. And they're usually going to try to find Dzeko in those moments. You track Barella when he comes into the box in those moments. You do those things and you do them effectively. And then you try to hit them going the other way. I mean, I think the couple of derbies that they've won because Giroud's target play was elite. His ability to hold the ball and his ability to release players and get things going. They need that. If I can't see Milan winning, but if they can get a score draw, like a couple of you are saying here in the chat, I think that gives them a boost, and that kind of gets this turned around a little bit. They maybe not winning the derby and just getting the draw so that it kind of sets the stage going forward. But we have to go by what we're seeing right now. I don't think Milan are giving up 4 or 5 goals or anything crazy like that here, because I think Inter's setup is different. They don't have wingers that they're going to pin on our fullbacks. They might fly Dumfries as high as they possibly can to try to keep Teo pinned back. But I see something like a 2-1 Inter win. We concede a penalty at the risk of getting beaten on a goal in open play, which is very likely. But I have to go with what the eye test is telling me right now, and I'll go Inter winning 2-1. I think Milan will play harder. I think that they'll fix some things, but I think that they'll just come up a little bit short. And I think what they'll do is they'll look at the performance. Despite it being a derby loss and all of us being angry, they'll look at the performance and saying, okay, hey, we're starting to turn this around. We just didn't get the points here.
Yeah, so. There has to be some semblance of it. It's dire.
I want to see performance. I want to see fight. I mean, that's basically, as a Milan fan, that's what I want right now. And if we get a point out of it or 3 points, great, But I want to see something that shows that there's still some fight. To your point earlier, there's some fight in this team. So.
Yeah,
but we're going to wrap it up.
It's the minimum.
Go ahead. Yep.
It's the minimum requirement of a club like this. It's
exactly.
sound cheesy, whatever, but it's what we need. It's because Champions League, it's massive. It's everything at this point. You have to make it again. You can't miss out on it. So yeah.
Well, we're going to put a bow on this edition of Serie A Sitdown. Martino, I can't thank you enough for coming in here last minute and coming to the rescue. So I'm going to give you the floor to go ahead and tell our listeners where you can be found and some of the things that you're up to these days.
Yeah, so more betting stuff. I know you're into that. Some of the older crowd in Serie A loves it. So I'm over at Odds Checker doing a bunch of football, soccer stuff, whatever the hell you want to call it. Doesn't matter. I won't insult you. Doing a bunch of stuff there weekly. So those are on Fridays. It's been a lot of fun. Still doing stuff with Sant'Angelo. We're doing more Milan stuff now. I was actually going to ask you and Richard this week. It was really funny that you mentioned that. Well, actually next week, because we have Uncle Sharma, if you guys know him, for this week for the Derby.
Yep, we know Uncle Sharma.
But we're just trying to get everybody back on again, and just basically what we were doing at Milan Reports, but our own style now. And yeah, just Martino Puccio everywhere. And please don't insult me. I don't control the budget, guys. I do not control Milan's budget. I don't know how many times I have to say it. Just because I'm American and in New York, it does not mean I control Milan's budget. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. I'm at FTC_21 and don't get angry at me if I'm going to respond to your tweet if you just say something random that just makes, that doesn't have a solution to it, because I'm going to respond to you and say, well, what would you do then? So
Sant'Angelo's the same way. He's like, these people, they always say they have a problem, but they never offer me a solution. I cannot stand Twitter. And then
he actually did that after the Sassuolo game. He says in his tweet, he said, Mr. Pioli, thank you for the Scudetto, but it's time for you to go. And I responded, okay, Matt, come on. You know better. Who do you get? And so that kind of, I think he gave me a brief answer. I didn't get a chance to look at it, but anyway, so I'm at FTC_21. Richard's at R_KHARMAN, and it's Serie A Sitdown on Twitter or Instagram. Find us anywhere we've got podcasts, man. We've got our own channel on Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud too. So check us out there. If you're watching Oh, there we are. So we're on Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio as well. Just like I said, anywhere there's podcasts, there's Serie A Sitdown. So chat, you guys were lively tonight. Thank you very much for your contributions, and thank you for your questions and comments. Was great interacting with you guys as always. And we will be back next week. Richard hopefully will be healed and good to go. And then, check out everything that Martino is up to, as he said. And we'll have to get you and Matt on real soon of
course.
Hopefully
after a win.
Yeah, hopefully after a win. Exactly. So, we'll come join you guys anytime you ask. Not a problem.
Of course.
So
awesome.
All right. Well, that's it for Richard, for Martino. I'm Frank. As always, tell your paisans about us. Ciao. Richard, get us out.